It is day 10 and the King Soopers strike is over. About 6 o'clock this morning, we brought you the breaking news that the company and its union employees have reached a tentative deal. Joining our conversation about the process now is our 9 News legal analyst, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Gary. Good morning, everyone.
So it seems like the strike is over, so what happens next?
Yeah, it looks like it. I was intending to come on this morning and talk about a little bit different aspect of the strike, and it turns out that it looks like they resolved it. So now the union members will have to ratify the agreement, which I would be shocked if they didn't. And then really they get back on the schedule and really get back to work. So, yeah, and that's the process in a nutshell.
So they hired some replacement workers, or they tried to hire replacement workers anyway, to take over for the striking employees. So what happens to those people and the striking employees? Are they guaranteed their job back?
That's a great question. And that's actually what I was going to get into in the previous answer, was what happens with the replacement workers. That's really one of the tougher issues when there is a strike. Now here, the replacement workers, it was a very short time period, so it shouldn't be too disruptive, but essentially it depends on why the strike happened, whether or not those strikers will get their jobs back. And here it was for an unfair labor practice. And so there, when they're striking an unfair labor practice as opposed to just an economic issue, absent some sort of serious misconduct, the strikers are entitled to their jobs back, even if the King Soopers hired those replacement workers, and those workers would then have to be discharged.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting situation. Looking back at this strike, I mean, it was a fairly quick one as far as labor history is concerned. Was it a success, do you think?
It was quick, and I do think it was a success. I mean, you have to look at the going back to the labor laws in the 30s and 40s, and even before that, they were developed because workers just didn't have a lot of power. There were unfair working conditions. People were being injured and dying in factories and things, and they didn't have any insurance or anything. So the law established union activity so that people, essentially the little guy, would have some say against the big corporation, if you will. And so the whole process, the negotiations, the last and final offer, the strike process, all of that is statutory. That's all under state and federal law. And so here, the strike was designed to do exactly what it did: disrupt the business, hit them in the pocketbook. And that's really the employees' sort of leverage in these negotiations. So I think it was successful because there was compromise on both sides, but they got essentially what they wanted by putting this sort of full court press on King Soopers.
So when we look back at the last several months, because they negotiated for 3-4 months before they decided to go on strike, are there any takeaways? Are there any lessons that were learned either for the union or for the company?
I think it's really interesting because we are having such discord in our, national conversation and the political temperature right now. There's so much unrest. So I think, in some ways, I would say that the process worked. This was peaceful for all intents and purposes, and there was a resolution. So I think, for me, I'm always coming on here saying we need to lower the temperature and everybody, we got to work together. That is a takeaway for me, is that, hey, at one point, folks didn't want to go to the negotiation table. Then when they did get to the table, that's the only way these things get resolved, is people being willing to actually, put the work in. And that's in, broader society in general. And I do think this is also more of another example of people power, right? We're in this era where you had, the GameStop stock situation and all the little guys came together. And then you had, the summer of unrest and people were out protesting and laws changed. And now you have an example of striking where union members come together and there's power in numbers. So I think it's another example of people power.
Interesting. Well put. All right. Always good to see you. Whitney Traylor, thank you much.
Thanks, Gary. Good to see you too.